never said anything," Hayley said, her voice trailing off. "I didn't tell them. I was embarrassed because it ended badly. I finally told her I didn't love her because my heart belonged to someone else. She didn't have to ask who. She knew." "Oh, Danny." "Look, buddy, I'm warning you," Bruce interjected, his face reddening. Danny threw his hands up. "Okay, I'll go. Right after she tells me she no longer loves me." Bruce shook his head, annoyed. "Fine." Then he turned to Hayley. "Tell him." Hayley opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. The congregation was utterly silent. "Go on, Hayley, tell him." Hayley tried to speak, to say the words everyone was expecting to hear, but she couldn't. She couldn't say no. She was taking so long to answer such a simple question. There was now surprised murmuring coming from the pews. "Hayley?" Bruce asked, his voice cracking. Danny stood defiantly at her side, feeling emboldened with each passing second. "Hayley, what's wrong? Tell him," Bruce demanded, desperately now. Hayley's eyes filled with tears. This was the last thing she had ever expected. Finally, she managed to choke out the words. "I'm sorry, Bruce." The entire congregation gasped, stunned. Danny couldn't help but break out into a wide, triumphant smile. Hayley shook her head, overwhelmed by the enormity of what she was about to do. "I'm so sorry." And then Danny grabbed her hand, squeezed it lovingly, and pulled her down the aisle behind him and right out of the church. Chapter 2. Hayley bolted upright in bed. Sweat poured down her face as she breathed heavily and took in her surroundings. She was in her own bedroom, in her house on Glenmary Road, and her dog Leroy was fast asleep at the foot of the bed. There was a lump snoring softly next to her, and it took a moment or two to remember who he was. She gently reached over and pulled down the covers a bit to get a good look at his face. Hayley sighed with relief. It was him, Bruce Linney, her husband. Danny showing up at their last-minute wedding ceremony at the Congregational Church 2 months ago had unfortunately not been a dream. Liddy had invited him, never expecting him to actually show up, and he had vociferously objected to Hayley marrying Bruce, mostly because the sight of her at the altar had so surprised him, so shaken him, he had had some kind of involuntary outburst. He had never truly expected Hayley to call the whole thing off and run away with him, and in Hayley's mind, that would have been the second biggest mistake of her life, the first having been marrying Danny in the first place. But luckily, Hayley was clear-eyed about Bruce and her feelings for him and how much she looked forward to starting a new life together, and so it had been an easy choice to make. She had set Danny straight in front of the church full of wedding guests, reminding him that their time together was squarely and mercifully in the past, and she was now going to marry Bruce. Danny had quietly accepted her wishes, quickly backed off, and left for Des Moines the following day with his tail between his legs. And that's when she finally got hitched to Bruce. They had only been married a couple of months now, but it felt as if they had been together for decades. Hayley had initially wondered how they would adjust to married life, what difficulties might lie ahead, but it had been so easy, so natural, so right. Of course, there had been a few bumps along the way. Bruce was an anal-retentive neat freak, and Hayley, after having raised 2 rambunctious, wild, and messy kids, had always struggled to keep a spotless home. Hayley liked to have dinner promptly at 6 o'clock, again a habit formed with her 2 hungry kids who had homework to do after dinner, while Bruce, who had never been a parent, preferred a leisurely dinner starting around 8 in the evening and lingering with a bottle of wine until well after 10. Bruce was up and at the gym just after dawn, while Hayley hid under the covers until Leroy and her cat, Blueberry, scratched and howled at her.